The Truman Show, directed by Peter Weir, is a story about the dangers of reality television before reality television was even a thing. I love this film. I think it might be one of the best films of the 90s. It tells the story of Truman, played by Jim Carrey, who lives a seemingly idyllic life in a coastal town somewhere in the United States. He's blissfully unaware that his entire existence has been conceived by the makers of a reality television show who broadcast his life 24 hours a day across the world. This is such a good film. On a superficial level, the film has a lot of themes of not just reality television, but everything that goes along with that. You know, the influence of mass media, of the nature of privacy, of being famous, of having fame. And it speaks on all those levels, but it's actually so much deeper than that, that there's a lot of themes throughout the film of really some big philosophical questions of things like the nature of free will, the nature of reality, the relationship between God and man, transformation. It's a really richly layered film, and it's one that I'm really looking forward to talking about. And it's a film that really speaks to me. Actually, I find it quite an inspirational film, and it's one that I really do enjoy. Now, it came out in 1998, which was before reality television really started. That was more of a sort of 2000s thing. And at the time this film was made, a lot of people, even including the cast, thought that the premise was almost too outlandish. There was no way that people would actually want to just watch someone in their day-to-day business, not doing anything particularly interesting. Of course, fast forward 2 decades to where we are just now. Not only are reality TV shows ubiquitous, you get them everywhere, but through social media and even things like YouTube, it's almost as if everyone's life is a reality television show. The Truman Show in 1998 was really ahead of its time. It really feels more relevant today than it ever has. It's so prescient, really, in what it was trying to say, and I think it's a film that deserves to be watched even today. Now, starting with the cast of the film, Jim Carrey is an actor that I don't generally like. I tend to find his performances quite obnoxious, quite loud. I don't really find some of his comedy films really that funny. But I think he's perfectly cast in this film. You needed someone with that layer of sort of eccentricity, that sort of quirkiness, but not too overboard to the point where he still could be an everyman. And I think Jim Carrey was perfect for that, because he has that flair, but he could just be a normal person, and he evokes that quite well. So I think that's perfect casting. His wife, in inverted commas, played by Laura Linney, is an actress in the film. So obviously she knows it's only Truman in the film that's not in on the joke, so to speak. He is the only one with the wool pulled over his eyes. Laura Linney plays the character of his wife with a real sense of gravitas, in the sense that it's such a superficial performance, which really captures the essence of what that character is all about. She knows that it's all fake. The lifestyle that they have is all fake. It's all for the cameras. And I think she modelled herself, the actress that is, modelled herself on like sort of 50s fashion catalogues. She has that prim and proper sense to her, even with her posture and her appearance. And there's a real, when you think about it, it's a kind of cold superficiality to her performance that I think really works well, and it really captures the theme of the film and this world that Truman lives in. I also quite like the the role of his friend in the in the reality show, played by Noah Emmerich, who's not really done much else. He's more of a TV actor. Um, it's a shame because from the deleted scenes, there was more of a subplot built around the fact that in the real world, the actor who plays his friend was really uncomfortable with the whole situation. Um, at one point, I think he was even preparing to tell Truman about it all before he was kicked off the cast. They hint at that very, very slightly during the film. I think that the film maybe could have used a bit more of that, just to show that not all of the actors were, really quite sort of callous and superficial about what was going on. But I quite like the friend character in this. I think they make him a bit more two dimensional than otherwise it could have been. Of course, Ed Harris plays Christoph, who's the creator of the entire Truman universe that he lives in. Obvious metaphor there is that Christoph is God to Truman's man, and they really play that up in the film. It's not even the most interesting theme throughout the film. The God and man relationship. The end of the film. Christoph speaking to him through the clouds, and there's some religious allusions throughout the film. And that's not even the most interesting part of it. But Ed Harris plays that role brilliantly. It was supposed to be Dennis Hopper, actually, that was in that role. Dennis Hopper filmed some scenes, and then they just thought, yeah, this isn't working, so they changed actors. And I would be curious to see what Dennis Hopper would have done with that role, because it's not something he would conventionally play. So the cast's perfect. The only other cast member I wanted to mention is quite a bizarre scene in the film, actually. Harry Shearer plays a role in the film. He plays the newscaster. Now Harry Shearer is a name that probably rings a bell for people, but you probably don't know who he is. He's one of the main voice cast on The Simpsons. He does the voice of, I think, Mr. Burns, Principal Skinner, and quite a few others, including Kent Brockman, the newscaster. And he plays a newsreader in The Truman Show doing the Kent Brockman voice, which I always find really distracting. And the weirdest thing is that isn't the only time that Harry Shearer has done that. He's also in the 1998, oh god, it even came out the same year as this, the 98 Godzilla film, with Matthew Broderick. He plays a newsreader in that film, and he's also doing the Kent Brockman voice. So it's really bizarre. And even as I'm saying this just now, I didn't even appreciate that those two films came out the same year, where Harry Shearer plays a newsreader and does the Kent Brockman voice. It's so strange, but the scene only lasts for 5 minutes, so I guess it's not the worst thing. I just thought I'd mention that as a little quirk to the film. So the cast's perfect. The structure to the film as well is quite perfect. It's really well written from scene to scene, how it builds up. So obviously Truman starts the film blissfully unaware that there's anything wrong with his existence. But as the film goes on, there's more clues dished out to him. He starts to sense that things aren't right. There's too many coincidences. He realizes that his wife doesn't really care for him in the way that he thought she did. The way that unfolds towards the ending is just brilliant. It's in the ending. The ending is just so cathartic. The way that it all resolves. I mean, this is a 20-plus-year-old film. I'm assuming most people will know that at the end of the film, obviously Truman does discover that the world that he lives in is fake, and he makes a decision to leave it. And just with the way it builds up, with the way he discovers things, and he just becomes really tenacious to discover the truth. And I think that's really powerful. That's the heart of the film, and it's just so good when he finally does make that decision. I mean, the plot has a pretty sound internal logic. Actually, they really sell it. I think. I mean, some people talk about potential plot holes in it, and I guess you do need to suspend your disbelief somewhat. I mean, okay, you could argue about whether this could exist in real life, but some people say, for instance, that why even Truman spends his whole life from birth in this fictional world. Why even tell him about the fact that there's a world out there? Why even give him that that knowledge that there's something outside of the world that he could aspire to. Why even tell him that planes exist, for instance? And some people say that's a plot hole. I don't think it necessarily is. I think that actually reflects on the audience, if you will, for reality television. People want to watch things that reflect their own reality. People watch reality TV as a reflection of their own reality. And if you had Truman live this sort of strange existence where he didn't know a lot of things about the world, he didn't know that there were other countries, or he could get a plane somewhere. It would just be odd. So I think that works within the internal logic of telling him about stuff like that. And I guess, yeah, the end plan of the film, Truman's plan to break free. Yeah, I guess you do need to sort of turn a blind eye to some inconsistencies, like how why when he escapes from his house, there's cameras everywhere, no one picked up on him leaving, stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it's not important. It's really not important. The look of the film is really great. It's quite sort of the cinematography. It's quite glossy, quite artificial, almost, and it's almost plasticky. That was the word that came to mind when I was rewatching it, and it really gets that artificial look down to a T. Like this looks, it's like a place that's almost too good to be true to live in. And it looks like a town from the 50s, even though I'm assuming he is not. For Truman's World, it's not set in the 50s, and a lot of the color palette in it reminded me, and it's pretty random, I guess, but it reminded me of the color palette and the cinematography in Blue Velvet, the David Lynch film, where again the theme of that film is you've got this really, really sort of beautiful on the surface, really bright and glossy suburbia, where people are living and people are happy, but then there's an underbelly to that of crime and sort of seediness, and the two are meant to contrast each other. And I guess that's maybe what they were going for here, where the look of everything is really nice and beautiful, but underneath that everything's fake. Everything's a lie really to Truman. And I thought that I don't know. I thought that was quite cleverly done. So to talk a little bit about the themes of the film, as I said earlier, the theme of reality is quite important. Christoph is asked in the news interview. He's asked, why has Truman never discovered that his life's fake? And Christoph replies, we accept the reality with which we're presented. And this alludes to the sort of age-old philosophical question about reality. Even back to Plato's allegory of the cave, which if you've ever studied that, you'll know that in the allegory of the cave, you've got these people who live their whole life in the cave. All they ever see is in the cave, and the sort of shadows that sometimes flicker on the wall. And to them, that is their own reality. How could they ever conceive of anything different if they never see it, if they never experience it or are told of it? And it's a philosophical mind exercise, really, to think about that sometimes, because really our knowledge of reality comes from our experience, and no one's experience is total. Not of people, not of the world, not of the universe. There's so much that everyone has to concede that we don't comprehend or that we don't experience in one lifetime. So our experience of reality is different to another person's. And I think that's one of the themes it was really trying to evoke, or at least it's one that resonated with me. And so I thought that was quite powerful. And then there's the theme of free will throughout the film. I think that's the thematic core of the film. Because Truman's life is very controlled when he's living in the reality TV show. Everything he does is sort of orchestrated by Christoph and by the creators of the show. Even down to things like ploys to keep him from leaving the island. They try and engineer ways to do that, so that, for instance, he's afraid of water because when he was a teenager, they made out that his father had drowned, and because it's a fictional island, he's afraid to ever leave the island. So Truman has free will within the confines of the show. He can't ever leave because he's afraid of water, and when he tries to leave, there's things like, they put in a traffic jam, or they start a fire. They do things to stop him from getting off of the island. Um, and it's hard not to see parallels with people's lives in general. We all like to think that we have free will, that we're free to make decisions. But really, life life doesn't allow for total free will. Things like our own obligations, our own patterns, our own comforts, our own sense of morality. Um, even things as basic as just your luck, all contrive to stop you from having unbridled free will. There's always things that constrain us. Um, I think, as Jean-Jacques Rousseau, the philosopher, said, man is free, yet everywhere he is in chains. And I think that's really what the film was trying to evoke. But of course, in the film, as the plot goes on, Truman questions the confines around his life. He questions these things that stop him from exercising his free will and being what he wants to be.
Ultimately, of course, at the end of the film, Truman does leave his controlled environment. He does become free, and I think what the film is really trying to say is that we are at our most human when we can be free, when we can exercise our free will and overcome the restraints that are otherwise on our life. So at the end of the film, Truman becomes the true man, which is um, the point of the film. So the themes of the film really help make it shine out. It's more than just a generic sort of 90s comedy, which I think a lot of people, when they see the DVD and when they sort of read the premise, that's what they think. They think it's just a sort of Jim Carrey comedy vehicle. And I think that's quite tragic actually, because it's so much more. It's a in my view, it's a perfect commentary on the human condition. It really conjures up so many themes, so many thoughts, so many questions. Um, and the conclusion of the film, to my mind, is just I think it's just perfect. It's such a feel good film actually at the end when he finally breaks free of the confines that have been placed on him and achieves his freedom. Really, I think it's so powerful. The final thing I want to talk about, this is sort of an addendum, if you will. This is a slight sidetrack, but at the very end of the film, I think I've never heard anyone talk about this, but I think there's a reference to 2001: A Space Odyssey. So at the end of the film, Truman gets to the edge of his controlled world. So it's like a dome. He gets to the edge of the dome and he realizes the horizon is just like a painting, essentially. And the way that he goes to touch it, he puts his hand out. Uh, and to my mind, that reminds me a lot of 2001, the scene where you see the version of Early Man, and then the astronauts in the present day reaching out to the monolith in 2001. They reach out to it, and I thought that Jim Carrey, Truman in this film, reached out in the exact same way as they did in 2001. Um, and the other reference comes immediately after that. Truman leaves the dome via a big sort of black rectangle, which you can't see anything through, very reminiscent of the monoliths in 2001. Now, I think that's really interesting if that's true. I've never heard anyone talk about this, not Peter Weir, not Jim Carrey, not anyone. The monolith in 2001, well, it symbolises a lot of different things to different people, but the most common interpretation, and the one I subscribe to, is that it represents the unknown, the infinite, the divine, whatever you want to call it. The things that are outside of man's grasp and understanding. In 2001, uh, the astronaut and the sort of the caveman at the beginning of the film reach out, and they don't quite touch the monolith. So in the sense that they don't really understand it, that man, and the message is really man will never understand the unknowable and the infinite. But in the Truman Show, he just walks right into the black rectangle. So I don't know if that was them trying to say, in Truman's world, he's disobeyed his God essentially, and he's leaving the fictional world behind, and he's leaving it. He's understood the sort of infinite, if you will, of his existence. So that was just a thought. That's possibly wrong. That was just maybe my interpretation of it, and I think that's what's so good about films like The Truman Show, because there are different interpretations of it. I read some reviews where some people think it's a sort of heartbreakingly cynical film, think it's really depressing, and to each their own. Some people take different themes from it. I think that's wonderful. Um, so as for a rating, this is a great film. I'm going to give it 91 out of 100, which is, I've said this in previous reviews, that is a very, very, very good rating. There aren't many films that I would give a rating in the 90s to. So The Truman Show comes with my highest recommendation.